Today is Thursday, the 20th of August, 2026. My name is Francisco Gaffney, and this is my daily streaming all about governance, risk, compliance, and advisory boards. If you just joined me today, let me put in context. This week's theme is a practical way to use an advisory board because advisory boards should or should not become another meeting where experienced people just exchange opinions like a talk shop. Some people say, oh, there's a sounding board. But if the advisory board really should improve how the company makes important decisions. And I'm not talking the non-executive directors board. I'm talking the advisory board. And that starts before you think about the CVs or reputation of your next advisor. It starts way much earlier. And that's what I want to address. When you define, and actually the starting point is when you define your milestones and goals, and then look for the right profiles to advise on those specific business outcomes. So effectively, this week is about what do you do before setting up an advisory board, right? So I give you all the clues, and today specifically, we are talking about systems. Now, yesterday, we talked about predictability and capital, which is on the right-hand side of the advisory board operating system model here, capital and growth. Today, we are going to talk about specifically about systems, so the performances, the governance, risk and compliance, and assets of your company, which makes your controls and resilience work. Now, many people think that this is boring. Why I need to do this? What is this important? Because even if you have the commercial acceleration that we spoke on Tuesday, or yesterday we talk about capital and value and how to make your company more valuable. If you don't have these mechanisms of control, it also, when you're going to an investor or to a lender or to your shareholders, they always ask for evidence, and more frequently they are asking more, and actually even the regulators now are asking for evidence of what the things are doing. Particularly if you see in the UK now, and this is extended to other geographies and jurisdictions, now they are board, the non-executive board of directors, they are required to produce evidence of what they say they were about to do, right? I think is chapter 29 or I don't quite remember exactly but I think it's in the 29. So this is now a regulatory requirement. So you can imagine if you're going to make a regulatory decision with your non-executive director board, you will need, or you will look into another group of experts that can give you advice on those particular topics when you need them, not every single day sitting, or every month or every quarter sitting in your board of directors board. So you need advisors that actually have different expertise, different point of view, different experiences than your board that is sitting doing the business for many years to now, right? So today is more about that point, control and resilience, your systems. And some people always think about systems like IT, like a software and hardware, cables, keyboards, that kind of stuff. System is way beyond that. It's your workflows, your operational procedures, your triage, how you manage risk, etc., etc. We're going to cover all these things. Now, this is where you sometimes make, I would say, dangerous assumptions, right? Because people hear resilience and think technicalities. I think, as I mentioned, like the cyber teams, the risk team, the compliance teams, and the IT teams. That perhaps somebody gives you a report and everybody is comfortable with that. They say, okay, that's fine, we are covered. And then something happens. So a system might go down, a supplier fails. Do you think it's part of the system mechanisms or ecosystem? Yes, it's part of that. It's part of the things that makes your company what it is. It's your whole organization as a system. Or customer data is exposed. And could be something that actually have nothing to do with you. It might be an organization that have been hacked, like a supplier, like a utility supplier that happened many times. Electric companies or water suppliers or gas suppliers, they are hacked, and even by extension, your own customers are exposed, right? Or access to stops working, right? Like could be controls, could be access, commerce access, you name it. So the key operation dependencies disappears, right? That's another thing. Actually, it can be your supply chain. That's a problem. That's a compliance governance problem. And suddenly resilience is not an IT issue anymore, right? So you start to see that actually is a bigger problem. And here's where resilience is often used as a simple word instead of its deeper meaning, which implies financial, operational, and adaptability treatments, right? So resilience, people say, oh, we are resilient, so we can cope with the future. But to cope with the future or the current status, you have to have this financial health, these capacities in financial forecasting, budgeting, cash flow, etc. You need operational health, and there are many things listed under operational, and you need many adaptability treatments. And these treatments can be financial, can be operational, can be human resources, can be the warehousing, you name it. So there's many things that you need to adapt as things change. And on all these three together, an organization can absorb shocks, as they call it, so protects its workforce and pivot quickly when unexpected disruptions occur, or resilience so then resilience becomes a leadership issue rather than are we ready for the future, or we have documented this in a binder perhaps but have not been tested properly. Now, let's take three problems. Let's take a look at three problems with this. Problem number one is evidence, right? So a company says it has a business continuity plan, for example. This is very normal. Fine. When was it tested? When was last tested, this continuity plan? What failed during the test? What changed afterwards? So a policy tells you what should happen, right? That's fine. But a test gives you better information about what happens under pressure or under unknown circumstances. So you need evidence, not just reassurance. A binder, a sign-off policy, something in a web page, it doesn't mean that actually had been tested and can be adapted. And this requires more and more frequent testing because we are now living into AI era, right? It's becoming more useful now to use AI, not only for yourself and your organization, also the other companies are using it. So you need to test your assumptions as soon as possible, even if you have been approved them as not assumptions anymore, but actually risk controls or whatever you want to name it. Problem number two is a threat speed. As I mentioned, AI, you have the risk and the environment moves much faster, much quicker, particularly with cyber and financial fraud. A good colleague of mine were through a due diligence process to a point where they find out that they were talking with an avatar, and in the other side, what happened was a glitch in the connection, in the internet connection. So they were talking to a person, and now on the other side, in a Zoom call, in the other side of the world. Everything was matching: the company names, the security, the EIN number, the balance sheet, everything matched, and they went through the due diligence and was everything matching. And then they started to realize there was a clone, was not a real company. When they started to suspect that that person on the other side was kind of a strange, the way that it was answering and moving, etc., they went and said, let's do a double check with the financial controller of this organization. And then they came to a surprise that was a clone company. And I'm not talking about like a few hundred dollars in terms of business here. I'm talking about a few $1 million business, right? So the threats are at a speed and a sophistication that you have to be very careful what you're dealing with and with whom. So you need to adapt fast, even if your company did not cause the issue, but because other parties are exposed or they are not as good intended as they present themselves. Problem number three is control failures. When a serious security or operational weakness exposes customers' data or interrupts important services on your side, the impact does not stay inside technology. And people will say, oh, that's technology. No, not always. As we just covered, is financial, is operational, is technology too. So clients will notice that. Your employees will notice that. Regulators will notice that now. Insurers will notice that. Investors will notice. Everybody starts to notice much quicker what's going on. So the trust moves quickly in the wrong direction if you don't have the measurements and the right explanation and procedures in place. That turns a technical failure sometimes into your personal issue, because you are at the end ultimately responsible of the organization. So, in other words, imagine resilience like this. It's a fire door in your office, right? So it looks normal, boring, and like as any other day, and nobody talks about it and nobody tests it. But then when the smoke start to get into the room, you will discover very quickly whether that door opens properly or not, right? And I don't want to get it dramatic or anything like that, but actually I think that this is quite the good example, because you hear that same thing happening every day when the people are talking, oh, I have another fire to put down, oh, I have another issue that I need to address urgently, and this, we can stop everything because we need to address this. It doesn't look like an emergency every day, just because this is part of the things actually probably are documented somewhere, but never tested properly and implemented those tests and learnings in the company. So then you are working fire after fire after fire. It seems to be a very tunnel vision of which is the next problem, rather of the whole ecosystem of your organization, what is causing this problem and how you address it. So, as a board advisor, what I would propose to consider is the following. Start with important services. Start with the core of your organization. Forget departments for a moment. What does a customer rely on, right? Which service has to remain available? Which interruptions or disruptions will damage revenue fastest? Which interruptions or disruptions will damage the trust of your organization? Which interruption or disruptions will create a serious compliance problem? So name 5 services that matter most, and then map what sits underneath them, right? For example, people, system, data, suppliers, and third party. So what you are looking for is the weak joints. You're not going to challenge these or to judge anything. You're looking for where the things are the weakest. The places where one dependencies can bring down a much larger service, right? So this is like a domino effect. Probably you've saw these videos. Actually, it's a little domino like this, and this another domino that is high as a ceiling, and the little domino start to go down, 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 and knock down the whole line of dominoes. This is the same. So start from the most simple thing that will start to knock down all the other things in the future. It doesn't mean that it's not working today as it is. It's just where you need to be prepared for these kind of things. Now, right. So next, define these tolerable disruptions, right? What I mean with this is how long can each important service or offerings or products be unavailable before the impact becomes unacceptable, right? So it's something that are patch, that's fine, but how you close that patch or these issues as fast as possible, or in time. How long your service could be disrupted? An hour, 4 hours, a day, 3 days? So, or could be in terms of finance, and if how tolerable is or is unacceptable in terms of cash flow, for example. So you need that conversation before the incident happens, not during it, because that's a fire that you have to put down. And then when you have this conversation, test the recovery plan. How are you going to recover this? Which are the measurements that you have, like a playbooks. And this is where I hear from many companies saying, we have a backup or risk management plans or triage protocols. Triage is what is the protocol, the step that you have to follow when something happens. So who is responsible, who is the next person to escalation, where is the people that need to call, which is the people in charge of doing what and how. So which all are these things are very useful, but have they tested when was the last time that it was tested, and when? Have they been brought up to date with the current standards? As I mentioned, AI standards are, but not only standards, the capacity to react to things actually before were taking days now are done in minutes. And I have companies that are in advising that they develop software that from different pieces of information of the organization, they pull it together, they aggregate it, they understand the patterns and produce analysis and reports of where things need to be improved, or reports to the organization saying, this is what we're going to change because we understand actually it's not efficient for us anymore, right? And they do this in minutes now. They don't do it in days, or they don't need to hire a specialist analyst for that. So the speed of things are changing, and you need to test your current standards if they are up to date. So escalation processes are useful, that's correct, but has anyone rehearsed them, right? Which is the last drill in terms of escalation that was documented. The supplier contracts are useful, that's correct, but do you know what happens if that supplier disappears tomorrow morning, right? Who is the backup? Who is the next in line? Or if you have spread that risk across several suppliers. So communication plans are useful, that's correct, but who speaks to customers? Who speaks internally? Who makes the final decisions? So that's a triage. Those questions expose if you are current, what exposes your current operation reality, what it is. That is what it does. So this is where the advisory board helps, because the resilience is a wider than one discipline. It implies, as I mentioned, financial, operational, and adaptability treatments. So you may need a cyber judgment, operation risk expertise, third-party risk, governance, data, crisis response, communications. So another company may need a different mix. It's not the same mix as your company. That's correct. So the risk profile decides the advisory capability. That is why the 6 months review matters. As exposure changes, also the expertise changes. So useful challenges an advisory board can bring to your company are like the addressing this company has policies, for example, but the board is not seeing enough testing evidence, as we mentioned, or the ownership exists, but the dependencies between risk are less clear. So what are the dependencies there? So, or being discussed as protection when it should also be discussed as business performance, not as a KPI for individual, as a business overall. And I think that this is where it protects the value of the organization. So that is how the system, the operational standards operate. The advisory board operating system helps you to understand how an advisory board can see the company from the outside in and give you these advices that you're looking for. That's why you start with the problem first, not with the advisor. You start with the problem, and then you find the advisors that can help you on the right problems, and you can swap this member every 6 months as the problems are addressed, documented, tested, approved, and then move on to the next one. So how I can help you is in 3 ways. One is the outcomes, a clear resilience model built around important services, real dependencies, and evidence. The third thing is differentiator. It's a rotating international advisory board. I can help you to put one together before selecting the members. That we are looking into what matches a risk profile, a governance, a cyber data, operational risk, and recovery capabilities that can be brought and them look into the experts without building a permanent executive layer around every specialist issue. We bring the expertise that we need at the time we need it for a period of time that we need it. And the risk reduction is a false assurance. We are not looking into say, we have an advisory board, we are covered. No, the board tests what matters before an incident, customers or regulators test is for you. You don't like that. Now, one action you can take home today and is doable in 30 minutes or less. And let me put the graph here. You can grab this one in LinkedIn because I'm going to post it in LinkedIn. Write down your 5 most important business services. And next to each one, write the maximum time you believe it can be unavailable, which is the impact tolerance, the material controls that you have in place, the current weaknesses identified, and name the owners. And then you can, with this information, you can write the single dependencies most likely to stop that service. Remember, we talk about stopping the service. This could be days, it could be financial, it could be other things. So if the leadership team cannot agree on those answers, not the writing down what it is about, but the answers, your resilience conversions, your resilient conversations need some work around it, because if your leadership team, your non-executive director board, or yourself as a founder or the owner cannot agree on the answers of these things, impact tolerance, material controls, weaknesses, and named owners, then you have a resilience problem, because actually all these things seems to be scattered, is not put together in the right place. So let's pause here for today and reconvene tomorrow, because tomorrow we are going to wrap up the week, and particularly with the edge. What makes your company relevant today? As an operating rhythm, you need a rhythm to put all these things in place, which is the right sequence to put these things to work for you and not you working for them. Because a company that protects everything, it has fails, and they need to adapt them how to fix those problems as soon as possible. Now, if you're leading a company with more than 50 employees and more than 10 million revenue, and you want an international advisory board to strengthen your controls and resilience without building a heavy management layer, let's have a chat so I can understand where you're coming from, where you are, where you like to go. And I can work together on how this model works and how members are matched before and towards your objectives, and how to avoid making an advisory board a talk shop, as I mentioned earlier. So have a great day, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thank you.